Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves. So we're going to go in alphabetical order as says Word, because Word is right about all things grammatical. They never get stuff wrong. True.
Never.
Chloe, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers at home?
Yes, I am Chloe Garner. I am in the middle of a gigantic fantasy universe right now, but I write science fiction, I write fantasy, I write urban fantasy, I write just about anything that fits into a speculative universe.
So you just don't want to be nailed down to genre.
I'm a genre stormtrooper, dude.
Nice. All right, David, you're next.
I'm David Hensley. I write Car Wars, which is post-apocalyptic sci-fi, a little sword and pistol, space opera, military sci-fi, and some urban fantasy, all of that for Three Ravens Publishing. Currently slap in the middle of a project called Ghost Ship Derelict, which is Space Marines meet robots gone bad.
Are robots ever good?
Yes.
Well, the ones that vacuum your floor are all right, but beyond that, I don't know.
I don't know. There's been some stories where a woman fell asleep and then the Roomba was trying to rip her hair off her head because she passed out on the floor drunk. So I'm just saying, robots can kill you.
Play stupid games.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
All right, Ingrid. The war with the machines will start when a Roomba gets into a fight with a stoner over a bag of Cheetos.
I can see it. All right, Ingrid, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers at home?
Sure, I'm Ingrid Moon. I'm an educator, backyard scientist, and currently authoring the sequel to my first novel, science fiction, all that stuff. It's all out there. It's fun.
But she is not a believer, though, because we were talking in the pre-show where about the recent find of a supposedly habitable planet 137 light years away, and she's nixing my dreams of a new planet to live on. She's just like, nope. This is why we can't have nice things, people. All right.
Blame the universe.
So sad.
Yeah, I want to believe. I still believe, people. I still believe. All right, Jana, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Jana S. Brown. I write science fiction, fantasy, and other speculative stuff under Jenna Ray. I am finishing the third book in my fantasy trilogy. My husband asked for it for his birthday, so it will come out on April 8th.
And that's one heck of a birthday present. That's
It,
love.
it is.
All right, and last but certainly not least, we have the one, the only Mr. Michael LaVoice.
Hi, Michael LaVoice. I am the author of Galaxy's Most Wanted, which has released the first 3 of 4 books. Book 4 comes out in April. I am currently working on a new series called Gladius Leagues, which is you love it, Ingrid. It's set in a future where we're out in the stars, but we never found aliens.
Excellent.
And we couldn't figure out why. And we've ended war in our time by proxy combat through a combat sport called Gladius Leagues, which is kind of like a mix of Mech Warrior, the WWE, and the NFL. But then apparently aliens do show up and start destroying things. And our only line of defense are a bunch of prima donna warrior athletes.
This is giving me vibes of
the first draft of that. And it's been a long slog. But I'll start book 2 next week.
So
sounds like that'll be my next read.
Yeah. Did you watch American Gladiator when you were?
I did.
Nitro, was he your favorite? Tell me why.
Nitro and I can't remember her name now. Who's the blonde chick? Her real name's Ray Hollett. Anybody remember? She was cool.
Nice?
Could have been. It's been a minute, and I've slept. So
yeah, I slept so thin.
Yeah, but I was just talking the other day with my friends about how much we miss people like Randy Savage and all the WWE guys that were so crazy.
Snap into a Slim Jim.
That's right. Ooh, let me tell you, Mean Gene. Ooh. Love that guy. Miss him.
The cream always rises to the top.
Okay, so saying she's a blonde doesn't help. There were like 9 blondes. Apparently, blonde was the color of the day in the 80s and 90s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
I
I'm
wish I
looking at
was.
the list and it's like, there's a lot of them.
Nitro and
I would definitely try
Sable
though.
Cable.
If they want to like make TV pop again, they should bring that kind of show back.
They've done it a few times
tried.
now. It's never as good as it was in the 80s.
No. Until you start shooting these people with bullets, it's not going to have the same.
She was zapped. Zap.
Zap.
Did you message her?
Oh, the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we first found them. So we were all trolling the verse for stories to tell, and somehow we ended up here. That would have been better and more on par or on point for the topic if I hadn't fumbled it. Like missed the patch and the pass in the clutch, man. I couldn't even get the sports metaphor right. What kind of person am I? Jeez. I'll do better next time, people. I promise.
Apparently, somebody that
You
can
don't
work
really
with
follow
playing
the
Roma.
sports ball.
I did the rugby thing, played in college, played in
That's
the
sports
army,
ball.
but that's sort of sports ball. But American rugby leaves something to be desired. While all the rest of the world is learning football, and in rugby, we're playing baseball and American football, the right kind of football. So yeah, we just don't compete. Anyway, all right.
The NFL's rigged anyway.
Is it? Did you lose a lot of money?
It's like the WWE now. Everybody wanted to see the romance between Kelsey and who's that insufferable person that they keep
Taylor Swift.
Some singer? Yeah, that one.
I'm getting the sense that you don't like the Kansas City Swifties.
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. Not a fan.
But the
I'm
memes
a
have been a
Bengals
comedy
fan, so-
gold mine. Seriously.
Oh, they
The one-
have,
the one-
especially
the one with Kelsey yelling at the coach. Every single one of
don't
those.
put me in. She's going to break up with me and
Write
take
a
a song
song
out of me.
I was going to try to convince people we were recording it the week that we aired it, but you've just ruined it. This is literally the Tuesday after the Super Bowl. Thanks, Nick. Thanks. There goes the illusion.
Wait a minute. I got a banner for that.
Oh no, it's always Nick's fault.
fault. Yes.
Nice.
You know, that's got to go on some of the merch once you get, now that you're back to drawing again.
Yeah.
Once you're done moving,
Always Nick's fault.
you need to put that on some of the merch.
Yep. It's always
It's
Nick's
some-
fault.
Some poor
It's
mom
always Nick's
or some
fault.
poor kid is going to have a mom that buys that merch for him, and his name is actually going to be Nick, and she's going to like give that shirt to him.
Harsh. Truly harsh.
One can dream. One can only dream. That's
All
where
right,
the merch ends up. That means a purchase. It was a wise purchase, and we did well.
Absolutely. All right. So obviously we are here. If you looked at the title, to talk about the most beloved franchise of all times, Firefly. So we're going to go around and give everyone like, how did you first find Firefly? Because not everyone caught it when it was on Fox, the channel where good shows go to die.
Right.
They've canceled Terra Nova too, so I'm a little bitter.
They canceled.
Terra Nova was good.
It was dinosaurs. What's not to like? We should do an episode on that next. All right, don't all jump in at once.
Oh, I thought we were going to go
I
around like you did before, but
Yeah,
hey,
but,
man,
I mean-
I'll kick it off.
I can kick it off.
Oh, go ahead, Nick.
Go ahead, Mike. No,
All
no.
right.
All right.
No, you.
No,
No,
I-
you go first.
No, you.
I-
No, you.
it's-
No, Nick.
All right,
You
come
got
on,
it.
boys.
You got
No,
it.
you-
I got to
it's
tell you
kinda like
before I do that.
We're all going to die.
My dad, I was driving my dad around in his Jeep because he had jury duty last week. And so I'm driving him downtown. I'm listening to the podcast. It was Ingrid's podcast, I think. Anyway, it was just you and JR and a guest. And my dad was like, "Oh, you're on this one." And I'm like, "No, man, that's Nick. He sounds just like you." I'm like, I don't think so, Dad.
Yeah.
How does hearing
Nobody
check?
recognizes me. You know, they always like my buddy went to work and he was in the locker room. They're like, "Oh, you're back. We didn't think we were going to see you back so soon." He's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, you had the stroke." He's like, "That was Nick. Why did like nobody recognizes me? They always just think other people are me. So I don't know what's going on."
I think you'd be
Maybe
great.
it's-
You'd rather you could trade the stroke with that guy, I'm sure.
All
Yeah,
right, so
just,
Michael,
Back to the thing.
Back to the
Firefly.
thing. Sorry, my fault. No,
All
I
right,
was
so-
not one of the people that caught it when it first aired. I didn't even know it was a thing until the Firefly movie came out. And I was like, what is this all about? And one of my good friends was like, no, you can't go. You got to watch this thing first. I was like, what thing? You got to watch the show first. Okay, how do I watch the show? Because it wasn't out on DVD yet. It wasn't available on anything yet. And so
Yeah, there was prerequisites, man.
it was years later till I finally got a DVD set and sat down and watched it. And I was like, holy crap, this is the greatest show I've ever seen. This is fantastic. What? There's only one season? So then I did all my research and found out why. But that's how I found it, and I fell in love with it, and I did watch it in the correct order.
Good job.
But yeah, then I just started seeing all these other references to it everywhere, and I started recognizing them after I'd seen the show.
Yeah. So what about you, Ingrid? You're nodding along, and you've got the right hat on. So.
It's pretty much the same story. I think my husband and I were like gonna go to a movie, and we didn't know what we wanted to see, and so we ended up seeing Serenity. Neither of us really knew anything about it. I was like, this is so awesome. And then, oh, there's a TV show that goes with this. I don't know how I saw it, but somehow at some point very close to that, I ended up watching all the episodes. And again, at the end, I was like, what, how can this stop? Wait, you can't stop.
Yeah.
I need more.
Well,
so
like
Jonesing.
You saw the movie first, right? How did that work for you? Did it was it confusing at all not having seen the series beforehand? Did it
No,
work
not
as
at
a
all.
standalone?
I mean, the movie stood by itself. So it kind of had
No,
its
I
own
agree.
flavor too. So
Yeah.
All right. Next with the man with
I
the
just
hat.
knew at the end that Wash was going to die. That's all.
Spoilers.
So
Spoilers.
Leap on the wind.
For a show that's been out for 20 plus years, but
Moment of silence.
Yeah,
for Wash. That's right up there with Atreya for me. That's just David.
yeah,
That's what I said.
2022, y'all. It's 22
Ravagers
years
run
old.
their spears through the wash.
David, how did you find Firefly?
Much like Michael and Ingrid, but later than the movie releasing. Like I got the movie on DVD, watched it, was at my weekly D&D group, and was like, man, check out this movie, it's really awesome. My buddy of mine was like, you idiot, you are missing out on the best part. And he went back to his house, came back to the game shop, handed me the DVD box set, and was like, watch all of this, then watch Serenity again, and then tell me about it. And so that's how I got into Firefly. Is I watched Serenity, then I watched Firefly all the way through, and Serenity again over the course of like 2 days, and have been hooked ever since.
Sounds like
What
a
about
common
you?
story.
Yeah. What about you, Chloe? You're nodding along.
I was hanging out with a couple of friends that one of them was really, really new to me and had no cultural credibility at all and was going on about this show. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can we just stop? I don't know you. I don't know why I would take your word for anything. And he will not let it drop. And it's like, just stop. I don't care anymore. You've clearly oversold this. And we got home and we're like, all right, I will give it one episode, but I am so not taking his word for this because it cannot be everything that he sold it to be. And I really feel bad for underselling him that much because he was right. So we watched the whole thing straight through probably 2 days and then the movie. And it's like, yeah, I owe that dude an apology.
Nice. Hopefully one day you'll deliver it. If not, and he's listening, she's sorry. All right, Jenna or Jana, or your other friends. I mean, answer as whoever you want.
I'm the outlier because I watched it from the get-go.
Nice.
I had a little apartment. It was post-college, which tells you something about how old I am. And I was trying to get a new television to work with a whole lot of cursing because of the way that the cable was set up, because this was, cable television at the time. And it opened up with some guy dangling out of the belly of a spaceship over a train. And it's like, okay. So I flopped down and watched it. It was the train job. It was the pilot. Well, it was what they premiered as the pilot. and watched it through, and then continued to watch the episodes whenever Fox put them on, and stitched it all together, and then rewatched it in proper order once we could, and was part of, the whole push for Serenity. We were all in on that, myself and friends, because it was like, yes, we need more. So there was email writing and all sorts of fun stuff. But yeah, I was in it from the get-go.
Nice. Stabby, what about you?
Everybody here made me watch it. Like all of you guys, every one of you guys said, Stabby, how have you not seen this? And so I had to go in, I had to binge watch it and break my own heart knowing that there was no more season.
I don't even feel bad. Not even a little bit.
No regrets.
Because you're so mean to me.
There, Stabby. There. This is where we're all giving you digital shoulder pats. There.
Go ahead, cuss us out in Mandarin. You'll feel better.
All right, Nick. What about you?
I caught it 3 years after I saw it in Iraq for the first time. I had already exhausted all of the movies that the entire platoon, I think even the company had. And one of my team leaders, he's like, "Hey, Sergeant, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm bored as hell, man. I've watched everything." I'm like, he goes, "Hey, man, I got this series called Firefly." I'm like, "That show that didn't even last a season on Fox?" And he goes, "The one, you got to watch it, man. It's awesome." I'm like, "All right." So plug it in, and it was like a maintenance day, so we didn't have any patrols that day, and I binge watched the whole damn thing, watched it in order on the box set that he had. And I was like, how Fox was dumb for getting rid of the show. The show's amazing. But that's Fox for you, man. So like they cancel good shows, and it's not good. So no, I fell in love with it instantly. I did have a connection with Mal, being a soldier. So it really sucked me in. I'm a huge fan of sci-fi. I love westerns, and I'm like, this is the greatest space western that ever happened. And been a fan ever since. I'm surprised I don't have a cosplay from there. Like I don't even have a brown coat.
What?
The hat.
How does this
Yeah.
happen?
We'll say yet.
Yes.
I don't know,
Is
man.
that allowed?
I'm kind of it's totally allowed to have a brown coat. I'm kind
Not
of a
have a
purist when
brown
it
coat.
comes
That's
to-
the thing.
I mean, I have a brown coat. I don't have the brown coat. Like I got my my Wolverine leather jacket replica that he wore in the first X-Men, but that's it. That's the only brown coat I own.
Well, we can do better. You gotta put your kit together.
I will as soon as I want to drop a couple of LBs, get a cosplay going, because I don't want to look like Mal retired.
Yeah, so when this show was coming out, I was doing the whole college thing, and then between that and the guard, I was busy all the time. So I didn't have time to watch it. And I was taking like twice the normal college, 24 credit hours a semester. So I was very, very busy. My advisor said it wasn't laudable that I was taking 3 majors at once. It was just a failure to commit. That's what he told me. But so I was busy then, and then, the war and recovery. And so I didn't actually even hear about it until I started the podcast before the Blasters and Blades, when we were the Sci-Fi Shenanigans. And in season 1, people were like, "Oh, you've got to watch this." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get to it when I can afford it." So one of the fans sent me a copy, like he paid for Amazon to send it to me. He's like, "Now you have to watch it, peer pressure." So I watched it, and I'm like, son of a bitch, I'm in. And then, of course, I watched Serenity because it was out at the time. And I have not gotten to the graphic novels or the stories in print, but we could talk about that
Waste
more
your
when
time.
You're going to crush my dreams like that?
I'm going to
Nick.
stomp on them, and then after I'm done stomping,
dream
I'm gonna
crushing
light them
night.
on fire out back.
Rude.
Yes.
Oh,
So I watched it in 2016. So all right.
Speaking of crushing dreams, I was notorious for sharing this series with people. And they're like, oh, man, this is so awesome. I'm like, yeah, man, wait till you get to season 2.
Oh,
Oh, you son of a bitch.
That is evil.
That's
Uh,
full on evil.
Evil.
That's
How
just
about
That's-
no?
How about no? Scotty, no. Nick,
I
no.
used to be able to tell you the name of the lady at Fox who canceled it too, but I can't remember anymore.
Oh, if you
You've
remember
let
that
it go.
name there.
Gail Berman, is that
I'm gonna
right?
Make a visit. Who?
Is it Gail Berman? Was she the president?
Oh, that probably makes sense. You know, if I go on IMDb, because you know, just regular people can add stuff to it, I'm sure her name's on there.
You
with
sure her name wasn't
address.
Kennedy?
No, it's Gail Berman. I just found it. I Googled it. All right, so
First
Gail
name
Berman was the
Kathleen.
president of Fox that made the decision to cancel it.
Oh, horrible decision. I hope she got fired.
Well, so let's talk about that a little bit. Part of what hurt it is when this aired, it was in the age of DVD or DVR, excuse me. So you couldn't just watch anything on streaming. That didn't exist yet. And so DVR would basically just program your VCR, or, well, not really your VCR, but it would program your box to record it. But it didn't record Firefly. It would record Firefly on Fox Entertainment at, we'll say, 9 p.m. on Friday. So if there was a football game that aired it, a presidential message, if that happened, if there was a weather alert, anything that bumped the normal time slot, that you would either get it to come back, so you're jumping mid-episode, and that was all regional based on what would bump it, or you end up where it starts at 10, but your block didn't record that. So you got the last part of a football game you didn't care about. So that hurt it. And then the other part is the Nielsen ratings.
Oh, if a game went to overtime, yeah, it screwed you.
Yeah, and the Nielsen ratings didn't count DVR as watches because you couldn't prove that they watched it. I don't see how recording it that way or watching it live, what's the difference? Because your DVR is still watching it and recording it live.
They didn't have the tracking technology yet. Like now with streaming services, they can track all that, how many watches, things like that. It wasn't until it got into streaming services that I think that Firefly really started picking up for a younger generation.
yeah.
Bringing a whole bunch
I don't
of
understand.
a new audience.
I don't understand how DVRs worked. I was too poor to have cable, so I don't know how that worked. I mean, does the TV have to be on for the DVR to record it, or
Nope. The TV would be on because the box was always plugged in.
Okay.
So you could record stuff, whatever. And DVR lasted for a little bit too. It wasn't. I mean, it didn't go away. I don't think DVR really went away until streaming started.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I still have
was it like
DVR.
TiVo or something like that? TiVo?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could TiVo, but with Dish and stuff, you can still do that where you set it up to DVR and record it, and it doesn't have to be streamed. And it was also in a crap time slot because they put it on Friday night, which is where shows go to die because of all of the things that they come up against, and because people have things to do on Friday night, so they're very often not watching TV. So Fox started it off with every possible thing they could do to screw this show. They showed it out of order. They put it in a crap time slot. They didn't get the ratings. They were out to kill it from the get-go.
Which begs
Yeah,
the
it was set up
question,
to
why?
fail.
Because somebody hates
I don't
Josh.
know, because like you had Josh Whedon, so like we used to tease each other, people that got into Fireflies because they're fans of Josh Whedon and because they watch Buffy and Angel. So like Buffy and Angel is a gateway drug to Firefly. This is what we used to joke around with.
Well, no, it's not that you're not that far off. I mean, I remember, my sister and I were Buffy fans back in the day, and that was my first exposure to Nathan Fillion as an actor. Was on Buffy.
Yeah.
At the very end, he's in season 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nathan Fillion is the guy that you can just call up, like, hey, we need you to be this quirky dude. And he just shows up, 24-hour notice because he probably lives somewhere in Burbank.
Yeah,
because I remember seeing him in the Santa Clarita Diet. with Drew Barrymore.
Hmm.
He was in that. He was a sleazy
Yes.
real estate dude,
Oh, jeez.
and he was great in that too. He was a decapitated zombie head for like 4 episodes. It was amazing.
This is why I can't wait to see him as Guy Gardner. This is going to be wonderful.
What's Guy
Oh,
Gardner?
you're gonna nail that.
Guy Gardner is possibly the most obnoxious Green Lantern in the history of the Green Lantern Corps. The guy that mooned Batman from outside the Watchtower window as
Nice.
he's leaving. You know,
I have that issue.
huh. So yeah, Nathan could totally nail that.
Okay. So
I want him to have the haircut.
do you think they knew that they were setting it up to fail, or do you think they were just that incompetent? Because it's Fox, so
I don't know. I think they were trying to compete with because TGI Friday on what was that, ABC was still a thing in the early 2000s. I think they were trying to be competitive. I think they were trying to reach to the sci-fi crowd of age and below, but they missed the mark because it's Friday, and like Jana said, younger people have stuff to do on a Friday. They're out doing their thing, having a good time. I think if they had moved that to like a Wednesday or a Tuesday or Wednesday, any other time during the week, it would have been hugely successful.
I think there's a certain amount of skepticism among the industry that science fiction and fantasy can be serious television, serious fiction anyway. It's not grown up, so they approach it with this tin ear of, well, there are these weird people over there who do that, and we have to try to go after that market, but it's not what the serious people do. And especially going back 2 and 3 decades, you run into that's for the weird people, and then they're the grown-ups, and they do the thrillers, and they do the dramas, and they do the comedies, and we just don't know what to do with these weirdos, so we kind of just throw stuff at them sometimes.
So first off, I'm going to stop you right there with that bold-faced lie. It has not been that long since it's aired on the television. I don't know what you were talking about. 2 or 3 decades.
22 years, man.
Don't you lie to me.
Yeah. Well,
2002.
Chloe brings up an interesting point. It was treated as like comic books were treated up until the early 90s. It's disposable media. It was always meant to be for kids, or at least that was kind of the thought process. Look at science fiction in the 1950s.
The guys who live in the basement in their mom's house aren't going out on a Friday night. So those, stereotypical nerd dudes are just all hanging out watching Firefly on Friday night. So,
But here's
I'm excited about it.
You would think that of all studios, Fox would have learned a lesson from their previous experience with George Lucas when they didn't have licensing rights to any toys when Star Wars came out. And then they realized that George and Hasbro were raking in billions from licensed products. You would think they would have thought, this sci-fi thing kind of does sell some product. Maybe we should go for some licensing deals and sell some starships and some brown coats and maybe, I don't know, a plastic Lamat pistol. I don't know, something. But no, they didn't even see that angle. And I was just flabbergasted when I read the history of it later that, man, you guys just blew it. It's still hard to find decent Serenity merchandise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but also remember there was a war going on with Buffy and Angel because they overlapped the beginning of Firefly. Buffy was 1997, Angel was 1999, Firefly was 2002. And so you had that overlap going on, and they took Buffy and Angel to the WB. So you had network fights going on when Firefly came out, and I think that may have had something to do with the way that they did it. I think they were contractually obligated to take the thing from Joss. They were not contractually obligated to make sure it did well because he'd already taken, because Buffy and Angel both became big products, same kind of thing you're talking about there, and he took them to another network.
So I think that they went ahead and shot Firefly in the head so that Joss could focus on Angel anyway.
Probably some truth there. Not Dark Angel, but the Dollhouse was a Joss.
Dollhouse was good. That one was another one that got critically cut short.
Yes.
Was that the one with Elijah Dushku?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they would program the different
Okay.
personalities into her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fascinating and far,
It was
far
a
too
great
few
concept, and it led to really great episodes. But if you look at the after season episode of where he wanted to go with that and the big arcs, I was real skeptical and kind of glad they shot that one when they did, because it left it where it was still great episodes rather than trying to do this really big statement on the nature of humanity and post-apocalyptic and
Didn't let it die the death of mediocrity.
yeah, they killed it while it was great.
Well, let's move that conversation on. Well, first let's do the commercial, and we're going to jump back to that conversation. But first, we're going to shamelessly shill for the man.
There's a thin wall between our world and that of the Fae. The passions and emotions stirred by violence and combat bleed over, and the supernatural often awakes from long slumber to meddle in mortal affairs. There have always been those among us willing to meet the supernatural threat. They are the men and women of Joint Task Force 13. They hold the line between heaven and hell. JTF 13 from Three Ravens Publishing. Available on Amazon.
All right. Sorry about the overlap. Normally, StreamYards would mute all of the participants, and for whatever reason, it liked Nick more than it liked the rest of us, so let him keep talking.
Oh, wow. I was talking over the commercial?
Yeah.
Totally, man.
Oh, my bad, dude.
No, it's not your fault. It's supposed to automatically do it.
It's Nick's fault again.
But yeah, it's Nick's fault.
It's always Nick's
Give
fault.
me the scroll. Give me the scroll.
That's not even on
One
my
scroll
fault.
coming up. You're insufferable and incorrigible. I love you all.
I was going to say, you like it.
And we didn't fire Stabby. She will be right back, I'm sure.
No, as you heard over the commercial, her computer just decided to go crazy. And it logged her out of everything.
It doesn't like the
I'm
new
sure that's
house.
your fault too.
It probably is. I gave her my old computer,
Ooh.
and it wasn't. I mean, it's still good. I mean, it's an iMac. It's a Mac, but it's an older Mac.
Well, that's half your problem right there.
All right. So we were talking about some of the shows that if they had continued, maybe they wouldn't have been as good. So like Dollhouse. Do you think
I'll slap you. I'll slap you in the Goram face.
I liked Dollhouse. So, I mean, I don't know. I didn't read the after show about where they were planning on going. I just knew the ending felt forced. But we're here to talk fire.
Maybe
so
that's a show I need to revisit because
definitely. But do you think Firefly would have been as iconic? Do you think it would have been the cult classic that it is today if they had continued it and it had gotten more seasons?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think season 2 would have been good.
Yeah, like season 2 would have been good, but I'm afraid that it would have gone the way, like take Supernatural, for example. The first 6 or 7 seasons of that were pretty damn good, and then it just got really weird and really bad, and it died the death of mediocrity. Like, it sucks that like it really show. Like I don't like that Firefly's only like 15, 16 episodes plus a movie. But it didn't die the death of mediocrity. All of it is good. Like no episode sucks. There's no episode that I'm like, I'll skip that one. Like they're all amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more on that. I think because it was short lived, it added to its popularity and its love. I mean, because you had millions of fans writing into Fox when it was canceled to try and save the show, and there was the millions of fans that got the movie made. So
I think sometimes fandom is made from anger.
Shark. Yeah.
What was that, Ingrid?
Had it gone the way of Happy Days and jumped the shark, for going on too long, it probably wouldn't be as, near and dear to our hearts. I mean, hell, we got 3 of us wearing Jane Cobb's hat, and we look rather dashing.
We do.
But
Buffy lasted many, many seasons, right? And it's kind of a cult classic.
It
could happen. And point out seasons that were not as good, and especially episodes that were not as good. When you go back and rewatch, there's some that are just amazing and general arcs that are really good, but you do hit those ones that you're like, oh, not this one. Click, 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 and being short also means that very often, like with Firefly, excuse me, with the Winchester brothers, that first 5 seasons is a really tight story arc. You can critically take that apart and you can see exactly how the arc works from a storytelling point of view. And then in order to continue, they had to reboot the characters and they had to undo a lot of what they had done in the original arc. And some of that happened with Buffy too, because they had the problem of when the supernatural thing you're facing, when the big bad of each season gets bigger and bigger and bigger, where do you go? And so Firefly, I think, eventually would have run into when we start solving some of these questions we still have, would that push it to a point that it wasn't as beloved, that we would have to do those kinds of things in order to stretch out the seasons? So in ways, it is good that it got the treatment it did, simply because we keep asking those questions. That brings us back to the show and wondering what could have been.
Yeah, I
They
still want to know how
haven't
the hell a
answered the
shepherd
question.
knows so much about crime.
Because he was an operative.
Answered in the
They
graphic
hinted
novel.
that in the movie.
Yeah.
But I want to know more about the blue-handed dudes, 2 and 2 hands of blue. They where do they come from? Where do they fit in? How do they fit into the Alliance? There's still questions that I have, and none of the comic books or graphic novels or even the novelizations have answered that question for.
I think that you can say that the first season would have probably had the highest possible average quality, but that doesn't take away from the first season by there being additional seasons. It's still going to be the epic series that it was. And you have to look at Joss's other products and can he land an actual series, or does he just go on until the thing dies? And I have my opinion, but those are largely formed when I was a lot younger and a lot more forgiving. But it doesn't change that it was great, and it's likely that there would have been greatness in future seasons that we missed out on, and maybe it would have died a terrible, sad little death. But there's a lot in the middle there that would have, I think, had remaining quality and remaining value to it. And I think that the epic nature of it is the quotability and the relatability and how distinctly different those ideas were than ones that were already there. And you don't take away from that by doing more content, I don't think.
Hey, Chloe.
I agree.
In my bunk.
I also think that if the show was not intended to run in perpetuity, that's a problem a lot of these shows have, is why they end up jumping the shark. It's why they end up undoing things from previous seasons, is the network keeps trying to keep it alive and keep it alive, and just milk it. But if you can get control over a show and say, look, we're going to do 3 seasons. Season 1 introduces everybody. Season 2 sets up this great big conflict, and season 3 resolves it, and then we're done.
Yeah, the Babylon 5 model.
You had ended Supernatural at season 5. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, or season 6, whichever one it was that ended with Swan Song. That's the perfect Supernatural season.
That was 5. 5 Supernatural. Babylon 5 had that nice tight arc, and that was really, really lovely because each season did have a job to do. And they started going that way when they rebooted Battlestar Galactica, and then it kind of fell to shambles because they didn't know, are we going to have another season? Aren't we going to have another season? Do we need to shove this in? And that's a hard thing with doing a television show versus, say, a book. Because when we sit down and we say we're going to write a series with a book, we have all that control to say it's going to be a 7 arc thing, and each thing's going to have that. Yeah. Now I know, Chloe, your characters sometimes just run away with you, but
no,
kind of.
This is an indie mentality that we don't even see anymore. I just want to point out that has not been true in traditional publishing.
Not
ever.
In traditional, but it's true in indie.
With indie publishing, this is an entitlement and something that we have that I am so grateful for, because you can control an ending like that. Absolutely.
But with
the
TV,
first comic book I ever put out was, I only wrote the first issue, and it was only until it got quasi popular I'm like, oh shit, I didn't know where the story was going, So I had to produce more, and then they're like, oh man, we really love these characters you put in issue 2. I'm like, oh crap, so they need to be in the story more. And they're like, hey, how come these guys don't have their own spin-off series? I'm like, Jesus, man, I can only draw so much, dude.
Yeah, that's the
So
downside.
like, I'm sure it's the same with books.
That's the downside, though, with TV is because it's at the whim of a fickle viewing audience, and it does limit the storytelling ability because at a certain point, it becomes more about the spectacle than the story.
Mhm.
And so you lose the ability. I think that's what you get out of like the Netflix, the Apple TV, and the Hulu, I guess, whatever else is out there. When they know they're going to
the Netflix.
they know they're going to get X number of episodes at a minimum, and so they can actually plan the series out in a way that makes sense. And then if we get more episodes, we could take the story further, but you can get sometimes a satisfactory ending. I don't know that they do that on cable television when they were doing it back then.
It's just such a trope at this point to beg for your next season with your last episode, and it just is disgusting for storytelling.
Yeah. It's hard to make it a satisfying episode because they're always trying to leave it open enough to, are we going to get another season? We want another season. The fans want another season.
They want to spawn a writing campaign by leaving everything as undone as possible. It's disgusting.
And then they promise you that they're going to let you get an ending in the graphic novel. In the graphic novel is a cliffhanger. Not that I'm bitter.
I did ask for that, didn't I?
I'm still cursing those writers.
What was that? What was the tagline for Community? 5 seasons in a movie.
And
that was a good show. But okay, so somebody mentioned in the side chat with Nick about you like that they use the Chinese curse words to fool the television censors of the time. So what do you think of that trope? Because at the same time this was coming on, you had Battlestar Galactica and frack was the thing for the F word, and so there were other options. What were you thinking on that?
They said the F word so many times in Serenity, and goddamn, like all the stuff that like the censors would focus on, that workaround was using Mandarin, and they tied it into the story because the Earth that was, the only two like superpowers that survived were the United States and the Chinese, And I just thought that was brilliant.
Well, the Old West flavor worked as well because you have, like in the old cowboy movies and TV shows, you had all those wonderful hick accents to play with, right? And so they really played that up in Firefly, like, Boram and Rutten instead of the F word, because what? Well, it's sex. That's what it is. So we all knew what they were saying, but they westernized it and but that's the one. But yeah, I think that whole the cursing in Mandarin plus the Old West flavor they sprinkled through it allowed the series to get away with quite a bit. But it also seemed to me the most realistic show that I'd seen as far as what are our colonies going to look like when we get out there. Are they going to be all nice and pristine and look like Logan's Run before you get killed before you turn 30? Or is it going to look more like a ranch and you've got a wagon and you're hauling water from a stream by hand? That's going to be what they're going to be like.
You're on a planet like, what was it called? Whitefall? The first planet that went out.
Patience,
What do they call them? Patience, the backwater planets. Those were awesome, and they were so rustic. Yeah, out on the rim, and that's where I've moved to now, is out on the rim, and I need to watch Firefly again so I could fully appreciate it.
That whole concept actually stems from the idea that we still talk about now. It's the idea when the globe was finally colonized and there were no undiscovered whatevers, that society lost the steam event valve, so that people that didn't fit in, that were just the outliers, they could always just take their ball and go home somewhere else and keep going somewhere else. And when you ran out of west to go, well, now space is the next frontier where people can just take their ball and go home. And you see that in a lot of sci-fi as a trope. I don't like it here, so I'm just going to go do my thing, and then society catches up with me, and then I'm going to have to take my ball and go somewhere else. So it fits with that. Process.
You can't take the sky.
Now, Jerry, you're absolutely right. I don't like it here, so I can go out into another part of the frontier. I can homestead out there, and then, but as human beings, we replicate and we expand. We're like, it's like the Matrix said, we're a virus, and the only way we can survive is to move to a new area. So eventually, no matter how far you go out into space, you wait a couple of years, someone's building a condominium development right next to you in this pristine farmland where you were homesteading, having a great time, enjoying the peace and quiet.
You know how you're going to know society caught up with you? There's going to be a man in a black suit knocking on your door, and he's going to be like, I'm from the IRS, and I'm here to collect.
Collect your tax. Well, and it's not
And
just
I'm like, those
take
plates
it all
better
to
be
go home,
3A.
but it's also where we send people that are unacceptable in society. Where's Space Australia?
Yeah.
Because you saw a lot of that in the show too. Not necessarily right out in your face, but as you looked at some of the other people that they dealt with, you could see that a lot of this was also folks that were not wanted in proper society or in the way that the Alliance worked or any of those kinds of things were shuffled out to the outer rim.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
go
Rance
deal with
Burgess
that.
and Heart of Gold, man. That dude doesn't fit into any Alliance territory at all.
No, and so it was penal colonies and place to get rid of people without getting rid of them.
Or the magistrate on Jamestown.
Yeah, Jamestown.
Yeah.
So do you
run by scumbag?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like the space western vibe that Serenity gave you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
I like it enough.
Oh,
I
yeah.
wrote a science fiction western romance, and it's Firefly with more kissing.
Was that Jenna, or any of the other names?
That's Jadalyn Asher, and it's called Desert Rains, and it's a desert planet that's all settled, and that's the comment I get on it is it's Firefly, but with more kissing.
So like spicy Firefly or just Firefly?
It doesn't get any more graphic than Firefly does. There's just more kissing.
So it's not turgid manhood Firefly.
No.
There's no battery operated Twixt than others. So
no battery operated. Not on screen.
It's not the Heart of Gold episode.
Nothing graphic. I don't write explicit under that name, but it is. Firefly was the inspiration there. That's the space western thing I'd loved for a long time, and so it was like, yeah, I want to do something with this, and that was the first independent book I ever published. Was my Firefly homage.
Nice.
I did that too.
Well, I mean, two genres that you're going to put together, space and western, they just fit, because when you think about space, it's exploration, it's expansion, and it just takes us back to our roots in this country of expansion going out west, the great frontier, and how the whole manifest destiny thing. So those two mix, because you're going to go out there and technology is going to go past you because you're not in the cities, you're not in the major industrial areas. You're on your horse or whatever beast of burden you got, depending on the planet, and you're living, you're foraging, you're hunting, you're doing all these things like early humans did, and it totally makes sense. It's a no-brainer. I'm surprised that there's not more space westerns out there. But you're not going to be Firefly.
It's the most in your face, awesome. But they kind of said, even Star Trek kind of had that space western feeling, that going out and beyond, and the captain that was the guy, because it makes no sense whatsoever that the captain goes on all the away missions. That's a good way for your chain of command to just die. But in a space western, the captain has to be that force of personality, because he is the cowboy. He is the one that holds the family together. I love the scene where they've rescued Simon, and he says, "You don't even like us that much," and he says, "You're on my crew. Why are we still talking about this?"
Yeah, you're crew.
In discussion, and Grunt had a lot of that
She's
same
our
thing. They're ours.
But
That's
she's
right.
our witch.
She's
Cut her the hell down.
I protect me and mine, and that don't. I don't know what did he say. I protect me and mine, and that doesn't.
Off to Google he goes.
I'm gonna have to Google that. It's a great line that he says.
That's what I like.
Essentially, it says, like, if unless I consider you to be part of me and mine, I ain't gonna help you out.
To Jana's
it was
point,
so
though,
well delivered.
To Jana's point, when you compare Star Trek and Firefly, Gene Roddenberry did bill it as wagon train to the stars, but it was far too clean. It was far too militaristic. It was far too Space Navy for me, compared to Firefly. And you're right, the captain in that setup doesn't go on the away missions as much. Kirk did, but he shouldn't have. But in the Firefly situation where you've got that setup, you got a small crew, small boat, tight-knit family, found family, which is another huge trope. That's just gotten so massive. I used it in Galaxy's Most Wanted. I had two guys who are basically orphans who find this whole group of other people that they can connect with and make a difference. So you have to send the captain on those kinds of missions. Absolutely. And to Nick's point, the whole, and David, the whole, we're going to take care of our own. You're on my crew. Why are we still talking about this?
Right.
You
Well,
don't
I mean,
see that a lot.
That's a very
I
Go ahead, Nick.
I deal with it at work. I'm on the boat patrol at work. So like my crew, I got them. I got their back. I got their six. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I got their back. I'm gonna make sure they're taken care of, especially if I'm in charge of the boat that day. So we rotate who's going to be the vessel commander. Commander being the operative word, because you're the HMFIC on that boat. So I take care of my crew. I'm like, hey, you guys fed? You guys bringing lunch? You got water? Because you ain't drinking the salt water, and we're a tight-knit group. These guys help me move on Saturday. They're like, I'll just bang in sick and help you move. It's cool. So all that fits in the Firefly universe with that crew. And just like any other crew, you want to choke your crewmates. You want to slap them around a little bit, but you don't, And that was just brilliantly and just awesomely executed in that show. Like, and what was great is that it brought the audience into where you felt like you were part of the crew.
Like they nailed that so well, that the episode with Tracy, the guy that they served with that they hadn't seen in years, shows up, and they immediately try to do the best they can to help that dude out, even though he's screwing them over.
See, that's because it's a very military thing. You protect your own, and they were all veterans of the war, so it makes sense that they would carry that over. Because that's just, that's the old joke, is if you go out with the guys and, a bar fight happens, if you come home with no bruises, it's either because you're Jackie F and Chan, or you're in trouble because that means you didn't help your buddies.
Yeah. And
that's the kind of mentality that's very, military, or I would imagine first responders in general would probably have that too. And so it kind of fits, given that these are all post-war individuals that have served together, or at least served on the same side.
I think Firefly
would be interesting if they had carried the story forward, and maybe they ended up with one of the other side on their crew. What that might look like.
I would love to have seen
an alliance,
somebody from the alliance, break ranks and realize that maybe the alliance isn't what they promised us it was going to be. But I think another aspect of Firefly that I hadn't seen before, certainly in other sci-fi television, was the underlying darkness, the underlying harshness of life and the way things were handled. Like, I think the perfect example of that, and it may have been the episode where everybody realized this show's different, is when you got that thug threatening Mal, threatening everything that he stands for, and Mal just like, yeah, you're right. And then he kicks him into the intake of an engine. He doesn't even blink. He just kicks this dude into the intake of an engine.
So that was one of Nikolai's henchmen, the guy with the tattoos on his face.
Yeah.
Craw.
That's a great episode.
It makes it stand out. It makes it stand out from like the Star Wars, where Han is supposedly this great scoundrel, but you don't actually see him doing scoundrel things. Mal was a scoundrel, and you saw him kick a guy into the engine. He was a different kind of scoundrel, and I liked that about the show.
Man of honor.
Because Mal was the staff sergeant.
Balls and bayonets.
All right, so what did you guys think? There's a lot of talk continually about a reboot. Is Disney going to carry on the story? So one, do you want a reboot of the original crew, or would you rather they continue the story in a different timeline or with different characters?
I don't want them to reboot with the same characters and try to redo the plot line and everything else. I think there was a chemistry among the folks that were doing the acting and that particular storytelling that really made it work in the way that it worked. If they want to pull the property back out, feel free, but either go early and give us the War of Unification or go afterwards and tell us what happened now that the message is out. I'd be happy to watch either one of those, but they'd have to have the right writers because to capture what Joss Whedon did, that so much of it is quotable, so much of it is these things. Could they capture that sense again without him? And he's kind of on everybody's no-fly list right now. And could they tell those stories? I'd be willing to go back into the property, but I want to keep Firefly as it was. As
a former ghostwriter,
Yeah,
I can say that yes, you can find somebody that can mimic that writing style for the dialogue. That can be done. The question is whether or not Disney, I think we already know the answer, would they wokeify the story? Would they do the swapping around that they do? And, you got to have the nice homogenous cast in it. Let's call it what it is. You have to have an X percentage number of people that are this race and that race, and this guy's got to be gay, and this guy's got to be this, and this gal's got to be that. And they got to check their little boxes. And that's not a way to make a show. It's a way to check boxes.
Well, it's not a way to tell a story. I mean, you write people, you don't write.
Yeah, it's inauthentic
Characteristics. Yeah.
And I fear that any reboot would take the popularity of the show and make it into a vessel for something else, and not tell an authentic story.
New Star Wars.
I don't care what's in that story as long as it's authentic to the source material and to the spirit that brought the show its success. But when you turn that into a cynical vessel, it's dead. And I've watched too many of my shows die recently. It's hard, and it makes me really sad.
Yeah, tell me.
And I don't trust Disney to do any of that.
No, you can't trust Disney with anything. The House of Mouse, you might as well have like a red armband with a black circle with Mickey Mouse ears on it. But anyway, so I think the only way that you could reboot the show, to answer the question, is you have to do a time jump. So, Wash and oh my God, why am I forgetting her name?
Book. You get no Wash, no Book.
No Wash,
but
no Book.
They had a kid.
Book's character didn't die. The actor did, right?
No, the character died.
Yeah, Ron Glass.
The character died and the actor died. But
later,
So you got to take.
You looking for Zoe?
I think Zoe. Zoe and Wash have a kid. She finds out she's pregnant after Wash died, right? Time jump 20, 30 years later. This kid heard all the adventures on the Serenity, wants to make his own path, wants to kind of follow in the parents' footsteps, finds an older Malcolm Reynolds, which you could do. Because maybe Zoe died also, on a backwater planet later on. I think that's fanfic, but I think it's really good fanfic that would work. You
could get an older Mal with an older Kaylee,
Yeah. And you bring the band back together for a job of some kind, because it's what I loved about it was a space western heist series.
Yeah.
And I like heist films. I love all that stuff. So you could do like an Italian Job series in space that's also a western. So hopefully anybody that's listening that has that kind of pull up there starts making that, because I'd watch the hell out of that.
The danger is that you get a show that's all member berries. Do you remember this? Do you remember that? Which, you can sometimes do if you're rebooting, which is why I thought just tell another story in the universe. That could work if they respect the source material. But if you're going to bring the band back together, you got to make sure it's in a way that serves the story and not just nostalgia.
That's another thing too. You could do. It's not going to work if you don't do a time jump. I think we can all agree with that because we need to establish that Firefly, the series, was in the past, but it established the universe. So we need a time jump. So you can do multiple things. You can have like an alliance guy that after the events of Serenity decided he doesn't, okay, I'm not the good guy that I thought I was, so I'm going to break off and go do my own thing. There's so many other pathways you can take, but you got to take the creative route and somehow route it back to the source material, which is the Firefly series. So you got to bring in some of the characters, the core characters. So like whether it be Zoe or Malcolm or Kaylee or
Simon, River.
Simon, maybe even River. You know, maybe River finally got her shit together. You know, the Tams. You know, and I would really like to see the Tams actually living life, not surviving but thriving. I think they deserve that from the hell they went through in the series and the movie.
What do you think, Ingrid? You've been a little bit quiet.
I just pipe in when I feel like it, but you know,
no peer pressure or anything.
I know, right? Definitely the time jump. That's absolute. But I agree. Like, you wouldn't want to necessarily bring in all the characters all at once as a reunion kind of thing, and because it will get nostalgic. You could have them make appearances, kind of like they did in Picard. I'm not saying that's the best show ever, but just this idea that like you could, you know, have these connections with these older versions of these people, but they aren't the key part of the story. You still have to have your own characters, your own story. And they can still embody a lot of the traits and the characteristics that were in the original cast, but you know, it still has to be its own thing.
Okay. So does anyone else have any thoughts on this one before we move to the next question?
Nope, ask us the next question.
So
what's up next, JR? Tell us, please.
Has anybody checked out the other fiction in this universe? I understand there are graphic novels, comics, and literature in this world. I have not checked it out, but has anybody else checked it out and have strong opinions one way or another?
All right, take it, David.
I checked out the comics.
Yeah, the graphic novel with book was pretty good. The actual novelizations in universe, I wish they'd have found better writers. Like anybody on this panel, I think would have done a better job. Easily. Like they were really pulling the nostalgia string and trying to tell original stories at the same time, and it just doesn't work.
Were the writers fans? Because I think that makes a difference to some degree.
I don't know. I'm still trying to get through the first book. Like, I can't tell if the writer's a fan and they're just overplaying their hand, or if it's a very cynical attempt to pull on the nostalgia string for the fans. Mm-hmm. Because I keep
that's how I felt with the graphic novels.
Yeah,
they missed the mark. They're like, I'm trying to write like Joss Whedon, but like there's nuances to Joss's writing, and his character development, his all that stuff, how he is creatively, and they missed the mark. It was a very bad imitation.
And there really is some great fan fiction out there, so it can be well done. I've read a bunch of it because it's fun, but right. Yeah, I think like
Ingrid nailed it. Like, if they're fans of the series, they're going to do their very best, and they're probably going to nail it. But what I was reading in the graphic novels, like it seemed like it was like they hired a writer and they did a little research and they did the best they could. But it was kind of fell flat.
Yeah, it's the Firefly equivalent of, you know, instead of getting Peter Jackson to do Lord of the Rings, they got the knuckleheads that did Rings of Power. You know, it's the same thing.
Thanks.
That's bad. That's real bad. So I could see that. I think the danger is when you write in anyone else's universe, you're never going to capture the essence of the characters another person created because they didn't birth themselves in your brain.
Right.
I actually think that the best way to tell those kind of stories is find a dark corner in the universe that no one else is, like, you've hinted at, you know, this one thing over here, but you've never really talked about it. And then take the flashlight that direction. And you can tell some awesome stories in other people's universes. I've done it. I've seen other people do it. But once you try to take their characters, for some reason, unless the main creator is actively involved, it always feels flat. Like they didn't quite capture it.
Yeah, you're right, because it's a big sandbox and it's somebody else's established sandbox. So like they set it up a certain way, and if you don't follow the rules, you don't follow the kind of the script of how that universe works. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it does leave, like you said, the untouched, the unlighted portions of that universe that nobody's played with, and you can do a whole lot of stories based on it.
Given the space western vibe, I mean, the Browncoat War is crying out for an Alamo in space. I mean,
that was kind of
that would be so awesome.
So
yeah, that yeah.
I mean, the opening sequence in Serenity Valley, that was basically the Alamo.
That's the one they talked about because that's the one that affected the characters in the series. But the war was larger than that, so there's a lot of scope left to cover.
It is, but
no, I'm not saying you're wrong as far as covering. For an Alamo, it was Serenity Valley.
But yeah,
well, then it'd be Alamo.
I mean, you're talking about established war.
But yeah, there's so much room, I think.
Well, I mean, there's other battles.
Yeah,
but they never explored that.
The other thing is you learn when you look at asymmetrical warfare, which is to some degree what they were engaging in. There's also a lot of nameless battles because everyone thinks combat like, oh, the battle of this or the battle of that. But in modern warfare, most of the battles are, unnamed route, whatever. I mean, they're engagements that didn't rate a name. And so some of the stories can get lost in the shuffle. And I imagine that happens the way they kind of set up the space combat. I did watch it after my experience in GWOT and the global war on terror writ large. So maybe that covered my viewing. But I just think there's room for, plenty of stuff that never made it in print that'll never be in the history book, so to speak, in that kind of war.
Right. Well, and I got one of those too. I mean, like when I talked to the guys that I served with over there, there's one engagement that we call the Battle of the Y. And not the letter Y, because it was the Y intersection that went into this really bad part in Iraq that was a tank killer, and we were all light infantry. So like we were no match, man. So it's little things like that, and that's something you could also explore in the Firefly universe. These little unnamed or officially unnamed battles that happened that, like, you could probably do a whole series based on the conflict between the Alliance and the Browncoats. And I'd watch the shit out of that, because it was definitely, it's been done before. We did it in our own country. It was called the Civil War,
So
the Grays versus the Blues.
Ingrid, what would you do if you were going to tell a story in that? I'm going to ask everyone else the same question.
Why you start with me? Go ahead.
Well, Nick and I said the stories we'd tell. So, what about you, Ingrid? If you were going to tell a Firefly universe story, do you want me to circle back?
Man, yeah, circle back because I think
Chloe.
I want to do the special school that River was at.
Oh, magic school. It fits for
there,
you.
the relationships there. How do you get in? What was the actual goal? What were the objectives? What are the other students like? And how did their lives turn out as she's breaking out and things are falling apart and the politics are getting really complicated? I am fascinated with the characters that came out of that.
I'd read the hell out of that too.
What about you, Michael?
I always wondered what would happen. We know that the Alliance, they got an iron stranglehold on everything. They're very, very empire-like in the way they run things and very draconian. But the rebellion happened once. I always thought it would be cool to have somebody who is Serenity adjacent, somebody who knew them or worked with them or something, is actually working for a resistance that is working to bring down the Alliance and make the galaxy free again. I thought that would be a cool show to watch. I would have watched it.
All right, Jenna, or any one of your personalities can answer this question. That joke is never going to get old, at least not for
No,
me.
it never is. I love it. No, see, I kind of already wrote mine because I wrote my book, but also I love the operatives. I would love to play around more with what happened with those. What are, where are the other operatives? And especially once the signal is out and people are finding out what's the deal with the Reavers, where does that come in? Do those operatives go, oh crap, we've been working for the wrong side and turn on the alliance, which would be highly fascinating? Or, what does that kind of character do when they find out this thing they've totally committed themselves to is screwed it up? I think that'd be a fun place to go, is go play with the operatives.
All right, David.
If I was going to tell a story in Firefly universe, it'd probably be in the Brown Court War, and it would be a space version of Quantrell's Raiders.
Ooh,
like asymmetric warfare, Civil War style.
Awesome.
Outlaw Josie Whale, Captain Quantrell, but in space. Sticking it to the Alliance until the Alliance wins, and then
Rangers.
and that's how you get Billy the Kid. So you could have one of those offshoots too.
Yeah.
All right, now we've circled the wagons and we're back to the beginning. Ingrid.
I would like to follow some bad guys or girls or people, like Saffron, who's married to everybody in the galaxy. She'd be fun to follow along and see what the hell is going on with her
Or Badger.
situation. Yeah, so that would be a fun one.
Oh,
And she does
Badger,
heists and stuff, so it could be fun.
And it's
Okay.
Christina Hendricks, who's amazingly beautiful.
That
I
doesn't
don't
hurt.
know. Somehow I always saw her ending up in a convent somewhere.
Only because she's stealing something from the place.
Yeah,
no
playing the
kidding.
long con.
Yeah.
So, does everyone have a favorite character?
Vera.
Vera?
Nice.
Vera is a character. Don't put it down.
Yeah.
I'll be in my bunk.
I'll be in my
Yeah. Jane?
Well, not for me. I know for me, it's a toss up between. I really love Jane. He's so great, but for the just being the coolest guy on the ship, yeah, I had to go with Book. Book was my man. I mean, he had the mysterious past. He had the path to inner peace. He wouldn't push it on you, but he'd sure let you listen to it or listen to you. He was very open and understanding, and everything you think a man of the cloth should be. You know what I'm saying? But he could still fire and blow some kneecaps out. What happened? What does the book have to say about violence? Well, it's a little cloudy on kneecaps.
So that character always reminds. There's a chaplain that was famous in the U.S. Army. He was enlisted ranger at the Battle of Mogadishu and found God that day and becomes like one of the, chaplains. And so that was the running joke, was that he had all the awards, the chest candy, and then the little cross over his rank to show that he's a chaplain now. But he used to be a badass.
he was my RI, dude. That's Strucker. Is who you're talking about.
That is who he reminded me of. Because he has this past.
You got a powder mouth, Ranger. Why don't you go do some push-em-ups about that? Strucker was a madman, even when he found God.
All right. So what about you, Chloe? Who was your favorite character?
There's so many good ones to pick from and so many really compelling reasons to pick them, but I think that I have to land on Zoe. I really like the confident, powerful female that is happy to follow orders, but knows why she's doing it.
Yeah. She gave off Ripley vibes mixed with the hell is the corporal's name from Aliens?
Hicks?
Sorry, stroke.
Hicks.
Yeah, Hicks. So it's like if you took Hicks and Ripley and they made a love child, it would be Zoe.
Well, sorry. The thing I love about Zoe, though, because that's my favorite too, Chloe, is that she's still fully a woman.
Mm-hmm.
She's a really great example of writing a warrior woman as a fully developed woman and not as a dude with breasts. because
Yep.
you see that way too often in the strong warrior woman thing. It's a guy with boobs, but she had desires that women do. That she had this loving relationship with her husband was fantastic, and that she defended that. It was you fought with Mal, yes. What about your husband? Fight with him too sometimes. And it's like, yeah, that's the relationship I wanted. And the network actually fought the idea of having a married couple on the ship. They thought that it wouldn't fly, but it was written so well that you bought that relationship and the priorities she had to go through to say, I'm loyal to the captain, but I've also got this husband that I love. All of those conflicts were really, really solidly true, and let her be kick-ass and be very much a woman at the same time. And I think that's part of why she was such a draw, because she was allowed to be all of those things that very often women are told you can't be. You're either going to be masculine and you're going to behave that way, or you're going to be feminine and you can't have that. And Zoe got to have it both and got to show us we could have it both.
And they didn't.
She has her cake and eats it too.
They didn't make her husband less than to do it.
No.
Which sometimes happens.
They just each had their role. You never saw her trying to push Wash out of the pilot seat or tell him how to drive. It was you do your thing that you're really good at. I'm going to do my thing that we're really good at, and we're going to be really balanced because of it.
Yeah.
Well, what I loved about that dynamic is it caused conflict between Wash, Zoe, and Mal.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole dynamic was awesome.
Yep.
Stabby, did you have a favorite character?
I'm going to have to go with Jane. I'm sorry, but if they just went, with Jane's plan of shoot first, ask questions later, that whole show would have been completely different. They wouldn't have gotten into half of the trouble they got into if they just listened to Jane.
And he had the best one-liner. I'll be in my bunk.
I'll be in my bunk. I'm just saying, if they listened to him, the entire show would have been completely different. Like, it would have been a completely different series altogether.
That could be our spin-off whatever version. It's the alternate universe where they listen to Jane.
I'm telling you, I would pay to see that.
So is there anyone else who has favorite characters they want to throw in before we move on?
Yeah, Badger. Man, I love Badger. Like, I could watch more stuff done with Badger in it, man. Mark Shepard just nails that character. And is such a good, smarmy, skeezy bad guy.
Because bad guys, man.
I want more.
Okay.
Well, and you gotta love Kaylee. She's, everybody's little sister, except for Simon. But when she's shot, you've even got Jane who's watching through the window, and you can tell that he is really concerned that she's going to get better. She's that one person that something could happen to just about anybody else and they'd figure it out. But to have stuff happen to Kaylee was devastating. And I loved that. And, she'll kiss Mal on the cheek and say, I love my captain. And it was never sexual. You never got that feel, but you knew that everybody wanted to protect her because she was this adorable sense of what really helped to keep bringing them together. She was kind of a good representation of the heart of the crew.
The dynamic between her and Inara, their
relationship
amazing. Was just beautiful.
I think
I love that.
I think the other
I
thing
think it's funny that she got the job because she was getting nailed in the engine room.
I do.
That's not broke. I saw it right over here.
We're just going to skip that part. That's how she got the job.
That's not how she got the job. She was screwing.
No, she got the job because of her
know what
knowledge
he
of
was doing,
spacecraft and
and
engine.
she showed him up. That's what happened.
But the surfer dude that was
sound like she slept her way
doing
in.
the deed.
Yeah, Bester was not as good a mechanic
out.
as she is.
And she was a great mechanic, But Mal used to. I love the interactions between Mal and Kaylee because he puts the onus on Kaylee, even though it's his damn fault because he's not replacing parts. Because jobs are scarce, money's scarce, whatever. He's like, my ship don't crash. If she crashes, you crashed her.
Yep, it's your fault.
It's your fault. And then Kaylee was just the epitome of like happy-go-lucky. Like she found the silver lining in just about everything. It's like everything's shiny, Captain. Not the fret, you know. And that's
like
a mantra
a
that like most human beings need to have.
a flame of innocence, but she was not innocent by any stretch.
Right.
No.
Oh no,
But
she
I
was
think
dirty
one of
girl.
my favorite things was when she was in that little nook in the engine room and the ship had just done something amazing and she just kind of pats the ship and goes, "That's my good girl."
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was Kaylee in a nutshell right there. Just beautiful. Loved it.
And the fluffy dress. The
Yeah.
fluffy dress is such a kick every time that she's going to get a fluffy dress, and she ends up with the fluffy dress with all the frills and flounces and the whole 9 yards, and then again hanging it up in her room, and it's almost like her little trophy from that whole thing is that pink fluffy dress.
She also serves, so a lot of, if you're in the military, the idea you protect the medic because they can patch you up if you get shot. If they get shot, you're screwed. In a space setting where you can't breathe if your engineer can't fix the air vents, she serves that sort of role too. So it makes sense that she's the one everyone wants to protect, because if the ship breaks, they suffocate.
She's the squishy.
No, you got to have one.
So does everybody Go ahead.
I was gonna say, because I had to step out during the question of like, spin-offs and stuff like that. But I think another cool spin-off idea would have been watching the Reavers become Reavers, like the backstory behind that. Ooh. I think that would have been a lot of fun to see. But we all know that I go down the dark side of things. So
yeah.
But I was just like, I think that would have been pretty neat to see, is not just, that they are bad guys and, we have an idea of how they became the way that they are, but to actually see the full backstory behind them, I think that would have been a cool spinoff.
Okay. So does everyone have a favorite episode? And why is it the one where she got to wear her pink floofy dress? Not that I'm biased. I thought that was a good episode. But what's everyone else's favorite episode?
I love War
Jamestown.
Jamestown is great.
Jamestown's great.
Awesome. But I loved War Stories. And that's the one where Wash is kind of feeling inadequate. He plans to go out on a field assignment and it just goes horribly wrong. And you get that dynamic that where he's doubting his relationship with Zoe, and Zoe's given the choice, captain or husband, and she didn't even hesitate, didn't even blink. Him every time before he even asked him. It's always going to be him. And I love that, because I love the whole fact that they were married and they had that dynamic. Like you said, the network fought it. But that episode for me really showed you a lot of the way that he and Mal were picking at each other. They're about to die, but they're still having an argument. It just, the whole relationship dynamics really came to a head in that episode for me.
You got the impression in that episode, they gave you the impression that if any one of those characters dies, it's going to be with their last breaths cursing whoever they're fighting. They struck me as that kind of people. Chloe, did you have a favorite episode?
You can't argue with Jamestown, and it's the right answer. But I like the whorehouse.
Heart of Gold.
Heart of Gold. Nothing wrong with that.
I like the terrestrial episodes a lot. I like the horse riding episodes. I like the frontier setting episodes a lot. And those are the ones that always pop to the top of my list when I'm trying to make that list. The Jamestown mining colony is just muddy and sticky and undesirable, and that's part of what makes that story so beautiful. But the wide open plains of the West, and then this spaceship crew in the middle of it, those are my favorite.
All right, David, you have been quiet for this part, so do you have a favorite episode?
Oh man, it's hard. Because I love Jamestown. Like that's pretty great episode, but I really it's kind of a toss-up between Shindig and then, gosh, I can't remember the title of the episode, but the one where Simon and River get kidnapped by hill people. Like both of those episodes, they kind of run concurrent with each other.
That one's called Safe.
The Big Damn Hero.
Safe. That's episode. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's that line that gets me every time is, what does that make us? Big damn heroes, sir. Ain't we just?
All right.
You got to worry about the big man in the spaceship, up there with the big gun.
He didn't want to come here.
Look at you.
Did you have a favorite, Jenna? I don't know if you said yours yet.
I like a lot of them, but Train Job will always have a soft spot in my head because that was my first one. That was the one that pulled me into the show and said, this is something that you have to watch. So it's not actually the best episode if I take it apart on a story level or any of those kinds of things. It's not the best episode. It's just the one that is always special to me because it's my first. It was my first episode.
That makes
Speaking
sense.
of firsts, there's a YouTuber out there that I follow by the name of Awkward Ashley, and she's a millennial and she does reactions to classic TV shows and movies. And she just started watching Firefly, and she did the first 2 episodes in the proper order. And it was just such a treat to watch a millennial pick up the show and just be completely enthralled with it, knowing zip about it going in. It was fantastic.
So here's the question for you. Is she an elder millennial? You know, the one that was raised like Gen X, or is she one of the, millennials where it almost becomes Gen Z?
No. She's closer to Gen X than Gen Z. Yeah.
So
she's more in the
yeah.
middle. Yeah, that she's the group that were kind of raised by Gen X, and so they've got some of those tendencies. Yeah.
I always have to ask because where I land, I'm barely a millennial.
I call us Zennials for the record. We are our own micro generation there in the middle, and we don't identify either side very well.
Yep, that's where I fall too, so I get it. All right, Ingrid, I put you for last again, so you had time to put your thinking Jane cap on.
Well, besides Janestown, which of course is a good one, it's really hard to decide because I really love all of them, and it's some of them they just have like different meanings and different approaches to the stories, and it's hard to really just pick one other than Janestown. So I'm just going to leave it there, I guess.
That's fair. All right, so does anyone have any other questions you want to dive into? Because I got through all my prepared ones, and we're at an hour and a half. I can keep going. Nick can keep going. He's addicted to the show, as you can tell. But
I want to speculate what the secrets were.
Oh,
the Joss Whedon hook, the trick, the gimmick that he does is each one of his characters has a big secret.
Yep.
And he doesn't tell the actors what it is, and he just barely hints at it in the plots, if at all. And it's the time bomb that is waiting out there for seasons to carry out in the future. And I think that we're all pretty sure that Inara was dying. Because we hinted that one pretty clearly in the movie, but I don't know what any of the other secrets were.
Okay. Before I didn't realize we skipped you, Nick. I apologize. So you wanted to say and then
oh yeah, Out of Gas. That is the best episode in my opinion. Right next to The Message and Objects in Space. Those are my 3 favorite episodes of the series. Don't get me wrong, they're all great, but like if I had to pick a favorite, it's those 3. But Out of Gas, you have a mortally wounded Mal Reynolds, as he's recollecting on his life and how he got to this point. And it shows us the backstory and how the crew got gathered, which I thought was a beautiful story, because we get our introduction to how the crew got to be the crew and the little quirks and things like that, like how Kylie got involved. We talked about that earlier, because she was she was doing a little thrill seeking there in the engine room and ended up getting a job, you know. And then she's the ship's mechanic, and she's definitely the heart of the crew, the conscience of the crew. So yeah, Out of Gas is definitely hands down my favorite episode of the series. And you know, I'm sorry, I know I've been talking a lot, but I love this show so damn much. It's like my second favorite franchise next to Star Wars. You know, there's two subjects I could talk ad nauseum about, and it's Firefly and Star Wars. And comic books. Okay, so there's three things.
For me, it's always history, which is why whenever we say what would we like to see more, I'm always looking backwards on the timeline instead of forward, because they hinted at the stuff that happened. I'm like, ooh, let's look at that. So I get it. What about you,
like
Dave?
the previous question. Oh, I'm sorry. No,
go ahead.
Continue on. No, I'd like because I got skipped on that question as well. What I'd focus on if I was going to write it, Shepherd book, absolutely. 100% hands down. Early days, you know, maybe get Michael J. What's his name? J. Jordan. Make him a young Shepherd book when he's in his operative days and his transition from being a devout operative for the Alliance and how he ends up in being a man of a cloth. What was the turning point? What was the linchpin, or was it a series of linchpins that he's like, hey, maybe we're not the good guys anymore, you know? So I would love to see that as a series, even if it's a graphic novel. I mean, I'll buy it because I'm dumb, and I'll buy anything that's Firefly related.
So you need to have, they need to have where they're looking and they're like looking at the next guy and they're like, are we the baddies? And he's going to say, well, we do have skulls on our hat, and go full lean into it.
Yeah, there's skulls with a slash on there to account for the souls we've taken, you know, off other ships.
Were there other parts of the show, Dave, that you think we should talk about before we bring this puppy home? Let me give all of you a chance to see if we missed anything.
I mean, I think we've kind of hit all the high points. I don't know. I think something that's sometimes gets overlooked is kind of the different meta roles that the crew plays. Like Kaylee is kind of the conscience, but she's kind of the goodness of the crew, and Book is really like the conscience of the crew, you know, making sure that Mal doesn't go to the special hell. You know,
what a place to go.
As long as your coffee doesn't get cold.
In the theater.
Yes.
So that's definitely worth thinking. There's a lot of deep philosophical points that could be explored, as you pointed out. But what about you, Jana? Is there anything you think we didn't cover in this episode you want to wax poetic about?
Oh, I think we've waxed poetic about most of it. I mean, we could really play critic on it, and we could break down, like Dave was saying, the archetypes that they're filling in, the prostitute with the heart of gold, the lonesome writer who, you know, Mal was always going to ride off into the sunset on his own because that's that archetype. So we could have played with the archetypes and stuff, but at a certain point, it's not fun to do that. And that's an interesting thing with this show, is that you get so caught up in who the characters are and how the story work that you can start by trying to be critical of it and trying to break those things up. And you just end up quoting things about pretty floral bonnets.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you'd wear the pretty floral bonnet if you had one.
I absolutely have one, but I couldn't find it. So now I'm sad. I have one. It's blue. It's very fluffy.
Why am I not surprised?
Got to cosplay something.
Nice. What about you, Ingrid? Was there any other facets of the show that spoke to you that we didn't cover?
I've been thinking about it's kind of along the same lines of the trope of the teenage girl assassin killer person, because you see that on a lot of TV now. And I was wondering if that was something that kicked it off or if that was already existed. I don't remember. So, because like Hannah and some of these other like TV shows that aren't necessarily science fiction, but have the, you know, some girl, she's raised in the woods and they're trying to capture her and she's kick ass. I love
I
this.
like
I love this girl.
I like to think of River Moore as a manic pixie dream girl myself.
I love it. That is true. But Joss did that a lot. I mean, you had Faith and Buffy, you had Dollhouse, you had River. That's an archetype that he really, really likes, is the seemingly, cute tiny little girl that is perfectly capable of kicking people's butts from one side of the galaxy to the next. And that was something he really liked. He pulled a lot of that into the Black Widow character, even though he was still pulling from the comics. You can see shades of what he did with those other women pulling into how he wrote Black Widow.
Well, and I think that was Josh's deal. I think he was a big fan of Alien. I think he was a big Ellen Ripley fan, and you can tell that in his writing. The unassuming, strong female archetype. And I think he was a fan. I think that's something that inspired him when he was younger. And he's put that in every female character that he has that is supposed to be that inspiring, strong female archetype. And he does it so well that other people try to replicate that and they fall short. But everything that he's applied that ideology to, that archetype to, he's done extremely well.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder. So, well, no, he was already producing when Xena was out, so it wouldn't have been that inspired him, because he's older. I was just say, because that was one of the archetypes for that too. Michael, you said you had something that we should dive into.
Yeah, about Matt. And somebody mentioned already that he had a Shane vibe, and that's true. To me, Mal was a huge throwback. You didn't see characters like that on television anymore. Not during that time period. We were starting to get into the milquetoast male characters already as comic relief and sidekicks on shows like Buffy. I mean, look at Xander. Until he went all militaristic in that one season, he was basically a wuss. And there was a lot of that. There's a lot of that now. Mal was a guy who always said what he thought, whether it was good or bad, and whether there were consequences or not. He very, very rarely backed down. But even if he disagreed with you, if you were on his side, then he was on your side. And I don't know, those kinds of qualities about Mal or something that you don't see much in a hero. And in fact, in a lot of literature now, they're actively discouraged. They're considered toxic or what have you, and especially his attitudes towards Inara's chosen profession, which was ironic considering it was Inara's chosen profession that got them the clout they needed to get to a lot of the places they needed to get to for jobs. And that was a really nice spin on the whole morality clause for that show, was that you have a woman who's basically a prostitute, but she's got all the class and all the social status to get them in front of people. That was beautifully done. I love that part about it too. But Mal still called her what he thought she was, and then Stills was secretly crushing on her, like the rest.
Oh, he was desperately in love with that woman. And you could tell from
even from the pilot,
their interactions. Yeah, it's like it was there's a real conflict in Mal in his perception of the relationship between him and Inara. It's like he wants to love her, but it's like, okay, that can even equate to today's morality, where it's like, oh, do I want to date a girl that has a 1,000 body count?
I don't think it was about her profession at all. I think he used that as a prop to keep himself away because he thought that he himself was dangerous to love, and he's protecting everybody around him from the fact that everybody he's ever known has died. He can't love somebody who might love him back, and then they'll die too. So he uses
and that's a soldier mentality too. Like any combat soldier.
It is, but I think that he uses her, the calling her a whore, as a way to make sure that the fact that he has feelings for her is completely sterilized away from what she feels about him.
And you're 100% right on that. As a soldier, as a combat soldier, when you start feeling like you're a little too close, even to the people that you're supposed to be close to, like your spouse or whatever, you find a way to distance yourself because eventually they're gonna go away. They're gonna die. They might change their feelings for you, etc. But that's a soldier mentality, and I think they nailed that specifically well with Mal. And he's dealing with PTSD. He's dealing with the Battle of Serenity. He's dealing with the whole Civil War with the Alliance. So he's finding ways to cope. And those coping mechanisms are not always healthy. So distancing yourself from people that actually give a crap about you is not a good coping mechanism. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that I associate with Mal, and I like Mal as a character so much, is because he does. It's somewhere. He's a guy that I can identify with, and that's what we're all looking for in these shows and this fiction. Is who do I identify with? So it's characters like that. Man, this show should have gone for 5 freaking seasons. I'm still mad about that.
6 seasons in a movie.
6. Speaking of like the soldier angle, and that's something that you don't really appreciate as an American. We haven't lost a whole lot of wars. And so when you see that as the characters are all, the tragically lost their fight. And so they're all living as we lost everything we thought we believed in. What do we do now? And I watched that show again. I watched Firefly in its entirety again after Afghanistan fell. And then you look back at what Joss Whedon did in the early 2000s. And holy crap, he did a good job at that. And you don't really appreciate it until you start thinking about it from that angle. And I suppose you could argue Vietnam, but that one is a little more complicated because we won the battles. It was a political issue. But just to lose on a combat angle, that was just something you don't really think about a lot. But then when you look at it in hindsight, you're like, oh, crap. And it's impressive that he pulled that off. So. All right. So with that being said, we're at that 1 hour and 42. So we're going to wrap this up. If we've got more questions, we're going to have to come back for round 2, and I'm here for it. Nick is clearly here for it. He's super passionate. We're going to have to give him a little bit of Valium for the next episode so he can take a deep breath. But with that being said, we're going to let everyone say, where we can find you on the internet so we can stalk you as we do. We're going to start round robin through the panel, and Brady Bunch style. Dave, you're first this time.
Yeah, you can find me at davidwhensley.com. That's kind of a one-stop shop. It links to all my socials, my newsletter that I'll probably ignore you on, mainly because MailChimp is like the trunk monkey of email services, and it just kicks my butt. So once I sort that problem out, I promise I won't ignore anybody. But yeah, so davidwhensley.com. That's where you find me.
Okay. What about you, Ingrid? Where can they stalk you? I mean, follow you.
Stalk me. Not on Facebook. IngridMoon.com. Super easy. Same thing. Everything's on there. Can't live without it.
She will love you to the moon and back if you follow her.
Maybe.
Too cheesy? Maybe a little bit?
It's a little cheesy.
All right. Jana, how can listeners and viewers at home follow you on the wild, wild web?
They can come over to opalkingdompress.com, or they can find Jenna Ray or Janet S. Brown on Facebook, on Twitter, on all the things. I'm out there. I am easy to find.
All right. Mr. Michael LaVoice.
Yeah. You can find me at michaellavoice.com. That's my website. Has links to whatever book is currently being pushed by Athon. And as well as upcoming projects. I've just sent out my first newsletter, so you can sign up for that if you want to. And there's also a link to every podcast of Blasters and Blades that I've been on. Which now, with this episode, makes 8, which is kind of cool.
Nice. It's like we like you or something.
I don't know. I don't know why you put up with me. All I ever do is argue with Nick. But anyway,
that makes the show.
Stabby likes it.
It's fun. Conflict is what it's all about. Anyways, yeah, that's where they can find me. And Galaxy's Most Wanted books 1 through 3 are out now, and book 4 releases in April.
Nice. All right, Chloe. When you're not living in your magic school La La Land, where can we find you on the Wild Wild Web?
You can find me at chloegarner.com. It reroutes to blenderfiction.com. That's me. Everything goes in and you never know what's going to come back out. You can find me on Facebook, and my Facebook group is the best place to come and hang out, where I actually act like a human being and have conversations, and I'm an interesting person.
Why would you want to act human? Human's overrated. Go for
You gotta
alien.
practice somewhere, man.
Okay.
It's because robots are bad.
That's why we live in the mountains.
Yeah, I just realized something before I tell everybody where they can follow us. When we did the introduction, Nick, you didn't tell us what you were writing.
I'm not writing anything currently. I'm overseeing multiple projects. I'm overseeing the artwork and production of Phantom Hawk reboot, kind of, but not really. I'm also overseeing the launch of our first speedster in the Apogee universe, Quickwire, which looks amazing. It's everything you expect in a speedster. It's Flash. It's classic Flash type stuff. It's quirky. It's funny. There's some really interesting stories going on. Interesting scenes going on that I chuckled when I read the script. I was like, what the hell? That it was funny. There's a particular scene. I'm going to spoiler alert. I'm going to give you a little scene. So the speedster foils a heist of a bank robbery, and he's kicking the crap out of all the guys that were involved in the heist. And because Quickwire generates a lot of electrical energy, so there's electricity generating through him, and it's visible. So visually, this gag really works. So you have one of the bad guys grabs a bottle of water and squirts it on our hero Quickwire, and he just looks at him like. And then there's a couple of panels where he's like, "Really, dude?" And when I read that, I'd belly laugh, like genuine belly laugh, because as a guy that works in the visual medium, I see that stuff playing in my head like a movie. So it's like I was watching a show, and to see that interaction, I was like, "Oh my god, that was the funniest thing ever!" And the writer's like, "Okay, you're super excited about this." So I'm like, "Well, yeah, because I'm putting my name on it because I created the character." But yeah, so those are things that I'm working on. I really want to dive more into our space opera of Solarium Prime, so we got that going on. I'm just gauging what I can do artistically, with the drawing stuff. So a lot of cool stuff going on right now, and I'm super excited about it. So right now I'm more of a Todd McFarlane facilitating the different projects that are going on that are going to make our brand better, and hopefully it brings in more fans.
Nice. Well, this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you, even though we talked about a TV franchise, we are at heart lovers of the written word. So please remember to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. So do your part. And that includes when you watch movies. If you're watching them on Amazon Prime, you can review them there. You can review them if you buy them in box sets. So you can start a blog if they won't let you review it somewhere and review it there, whatever. But share your opinions. It really does help get more of the creative art you love out into the world. And with that being said, you can follow us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the Twitters, where I just want you to know, if you think the memes were funny, I shared them. If you thought it was too much and, oh my God, are you in therapy? I'll blame Nick, even though I run the Twitter account. Just so you know, we blame Nick if you don't like the meme. If you laugh hysterically, all me. This is how it works. And sometimes Stabby, because I steal them from her before she can share them, and then she stabs Nick because she's mad at me. It works for us, people. Maybe
she's going to start the room now. It's going to take her longer.
She's going to have to throw it. We have an email address, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, Blasters and Blades podcast at gmail.com. For our serious business inquiries, if you want to book with us, you want to send us commercials, that's where you do it. We have a Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen. And more importantly, we have a new Facebook page where I share the episodes, funny memes, just, book reviews, the things. We get nerdy there. It is new, so be sure to follow it. We got locked out of the other one. And then most importantly, we have Madam Stabby Stab on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. So if you have saucy, spicy things to say, send it to her. And she'll stab you too. You can join Nick in the fiction gallery.
And the stabbage.
That's right. And last, you like it, Nick. You can follow us on our website at anchor.fm/blasters tack and tack blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters and blades, where for as little as 99 cents a month, you can keep the lights on, or help us keep the lights on, I should say. Or you could support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my panel of hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink until it pours out of their ears. And how it got there, we do not know. We don't ask those questions. We don't want to know. So we just smile and we nod and we back away slowly, people, slowly. And now, last but not least, you can support the show by clicking the link in the show notes for Coffee Brand Coffee. Use the code PODCASTGRUNTS and you'll get 10% off. And with that, Stabby, what are you drinking from them right now?
So my current one is, I believe, so I gotta find the box. As you guys can see, we just moved to a bigger office and a bigger house on a bigger property, and I can't find most of my stuff just yet. So I'm drinking a mixture of Folgers and the last of my pecan sticky roll Coffee Brand Coffee together, because it's
you're
all
drinking
I
it together
have to keep me awake. Yeah, I put them both
interesting.
in there.
Does it taste better mixed?
Oh,
yeah, you're stretching it. I get it. So, all right.
Yeah.
Jenna and I will both swear by their cocoa. I'm just
so
saying.
Good. So very good. Was yummy.
I gotta find the coffee box.
Nice. Well, with that being said, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And as you will notice, this is now March when you are listening, so we will be going back to 3 episodes a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, because we are building back up our buffer to do that. So who needs sleep while we're building the buffer? But in the meantime, enjoy the extra content. And we appreciate all of you fine folks coming back. We're going to have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chloe, Jana, Ingrid, David, Michael.
Awesome.
Anytime.
All righty. And we